So with all of that understanding, or that general idea of how I think about energy and try to use that in the markets, you can see why I fight about the markets purely on a fundamental level, because it's overwhelmingly clear that there is a true technical side to the market, which comes about because everything resolves itself to a field of one kind or another. So, your very body that keeps you alive is a field of energy, and medicine is trying to understand that field as best as they can, and under the constraints that we've talked about, that unfortunately doctors, and fortunately in some cases, but in many cases it's not so fortunate, that doctors are contained in. I've complained about this before, but 100 years ago, when somebody would get cancer, they would cut people, amputate people, irradiate people, and chemotherapy people. That was 100 years ago. It's unfathomable that 100 years later, that's exactly what we're doing today, with the caveat that if you discover cancer early, you're better off. That's 100 years. The industrial medical complex can now say, if you discover this stuff early, you're better off. That's 100 years of cancer development in our world. Now, there's many, many studies and many, many things going on, but my complaints about the medical industrial complex and what they've done and what they continue to do. And it's going to require something like an Elon Musk to come along and blow the whole thing up in order for medicine to advance, because it isn't going to really advance the way that it's going, because there's too much money to be made. And that's really the bottom line. There's just too much money to be made on longer treatments that are expensive, that go on and on for long periods of time. If somebody really did, and this is not to say anything bad about doctors, because there's so many doctors that are so caring and really want their patients to live, and they want to do whatever they can, even though they're constrained, and in some cases rightfully so, but in many cases not so much. But these doctors do care, but in the end, their patients are being given treatments that just go on and on and on for years, and really end up pretty much with the same results. If somebody did actually find what could be thought of either as a cure or even as something that reduced cancer to a chronic condition, and they could prove that, I guarantee you it would be another 100 years before the current industrial medical complex would allow that information to be used by doctors. 100 years. That's what I'm telling you, they would wait. They're just simply not going to give up the long road that they've laid out for everybody who has this or that disease. They're not going to give it up. So it's unfortunate that it is that way. And at some point it'll change. But this is a different subject, but I just wanted to touch on that again, because many of my clients are doctors. In fact, one of them might be in here right now, a guy that I really love this guy, love this guy. And he knows his name starts with a J and it ends with OEL. And he's a doctor, and he's been around this industry for a long time, and he's a very skilled doctor and has a practice and so on. But I know people who, two individuals, and this is not a study, but I just happen to know two people that took the same kinds of approaches to solving their cancer problem. And both of them one of them lived about 8 years beyond your go home to get your affairs in order. That means go home to die, because we can't do anything more for you. That woman lived 8 additional years doing this particular treatment that would never, ever be done by doctors or they can't even talk about it. They can't even talk about it. That's how restrained they are. And then another one who was sent home, and he was my business partner. That's why I know this so intimately. I know both these people intimately well. So it's not third-hand evidence. And he also used the same treatment. He was sent home in 2009 to get his affairs in order. And he is still alive today in 2022. And he considers, although he's been to the doctors now, he goes to them and has an x-ray done. They don't find any cancer in him, but he senses that it is and that he has to continue this treatment. He does this treatment to himself. So my point is that if you had 100 of these people and showed these results, they couldn't care less. That's my complaint. And I really mean that, not doctors, the medical industrial complex that keeps all the doctors in place. They couldn't care less. They would tell you there's not enough studies, but that's because they're not going to ever do any studies. They don't want to do studies on something that doesn't cost a lot of money. So it's money, and that's my big complaint. So medicine is being constrained, like many other fields, because of money. Same thing with scientists and the government. The government is paying a scientist to get a result about some hotly contested subject, like climate change, not climate control. We all have air conditioners. We have climate control. If that scientist comes back with information, the government, because it's all been politicized, if the government doesn't like his answer, they won't hire him for reports anymore, and then he doesn't eat. So what does he have to do? He has to give them the information that they actually want so they can put reports together. And this is not just true with climate change, it's true with all kinds of things. So the problem is that everything has become politicized, including medicine. And we've just completely gone off course where nobody can really know the truth about anything anymore because everyone's so busy getting what they want done. Their pressure group is pushing for this outcome. The medical pressure group's pushing for this outcome. What I would encourage anybody to do, and I know you all do this now, is because we have the internet, thankfully, we can investigate and see. Now, believe me, I had a brother many years ago who unfortunately went through a terrible thing in his life and it killed him. And it was a disease. And I was with him going to places that were literally just quacks. I mean, let's not forget that there's people on the other side of doctors who would love to charge you a lot of money too for worthless work because people are desperate. So there's that as well. But I just hope that at some point that, as I really, segued off of the markets here, but I just want to say, I just hope, and I don't have a lot of hope because of the way things are going, but it would be so wonderful if there could be some 1% truth in everything law, that there has to be at least 1% truth. Just like we talk about knowing 1% about the market and so on. It would be really nice if that was the case, or maybe 2% truth about something. Why everything has to be hidden and politicized and maximized so that people can get at the top, can get their great advantage over a long period of time. At some point, that's going to have to end, but it's not going to end by itself. It's going to have to end by a huge disruptor. There isn't a living doctor today that's going to disrupt, no matter what his intentions are, the industrial medical complex. He's not going to be able to do it. And nor would some other group be able to do it. It's going to have to be some really powerful force that blows the whole thing up ultimately and gets ordinary people into a position where things that could be proven to have been helpful could really be used and really be diagnosed that way and treated that way. And unfortunately, we don't have that now. So listen, I hope everybody that's listening to me today is well, but I would encourage you to do a lot of your own research, and I'm sure you will if you aren't so well, because medicine has a lot of truths to it, but they're going to protect those even in the face of, in many cases, overwhelming evidence, because it's all tied together, the pharmaceuticals and everything else. You know the whole thing. I used to not be a conspiracy theorist, and I still am not one. I'm a conspiracy factualist. What I just told you are facts. The industrial complex is all about money. And really, that's about it. And if they can keep it coming in at the rate they're coming in, they'll continue to do that until something blows it up. So anyway, I guess I kind of ranted here a little bit, but one of my good friends, his girlfriend, fiance, is going through treatments right now for cancer. And she got it at a relatively young age, and it has gotten worse, and they're just sort of stepping her through, and she's done the whole thing. And listen, they can't cure everybody. My mother went through stage 1 breast cancer, and she went to regular doctors, and they took care of it. It didn't spread, and she was on a drug called tamoxifen for the rest of her life, and she never had another bout with it. So there certainly are successes that occur. I don't want to make it sound like there are no successes. But I sure wish that some of the things that are promising would be looked at seriously instead of BS'd away because they don't want to stop. So that's the problem. And so this is why this is on my mind, because I'm watching her struggle through this. And, I know at some point the doctors are going to say, well, this is all we can do for you at this time. And though that day may be coming. So I'm going to do what I can do for her to help her in the way that I've seen 2 other friends go through. And that's why this subject is on my head today. So thanks for listening to all that.